Darren, good evening. It's Tuesday, January the 15th, 2019, and I'd like to talk about home automation and in particular Sonoff light switches. Alexa, desk on. Okay, so I just wanted to start off with a bit of background, in fact, and to talk about home automation in general. So, home automation has been around for at least a decade, but it's been mostly the province of the super rich, and it's been installed via companies like, and there are many, but I'll give you one example of Control 4, and they're a high-end company who can equip your house with their range of home automation products. And at the end of the day, you'll have a lovely set of integrated products, and it may cost you, I don't know, $10,000, $20,000, £10,000, that kind of price range. These days, however, with the proliferation of Amazon devices, we can do these kind of things for a lot less money. And in particular, the invention of the microcontroller, which is essentially a CPU on a chip, has given us the ability to design a number of smart light switches and other smart home devices for very low cost. Marcus and Agatha are new back to England after more than a decade away, and in our new house we've decided to see what was possible with home automation, and like good engineers, we've decided we'll document as much as we can of what we've done. So we have, and we're just in the finishing stages of replacing all of our light switches, and we've done, as usual, a lot of analysis, and what we came up with was the Sonoff T1 light switch. And in front of you are two of these examples. So the purpose of this video is going to be just to talk about the background, which I've already done, but also to go into a little bit more detail about these particular switches. And then there are two other videos that help you change these switches into a more fancy form by reflashing them, effectively hacking them, if you like. And then I'm going to show you the infrastructure that we've set up, just in broad detail, so you might be able to use that as a starting point for your own implementation. So in front of you are the two switches. As you can see, this is a 2-gang switch, and this is a 1-gang switch. So this can control 2 different circuits, and this can control 1 circuit. The first thing you've got to notice is that if we turn these switches over here, you'll see that there's a neutral in and a live in, and then one or more live outs. For the single gang switch, there's just an L1, and for the double switch, there's an L1 and an L2. Look at that. You see that? So the most important thing before you get your hopes up high is that you are not going to be able to change any of the light switches in your home unless you have a neutral connection. So in UK homes, it's been traditional to only have a switch live connection. So if you open up your switching box, obviously turn off the breaker first, open it up. You might see in there you'll have an earth wire and a live wire, but there'll be no neutral wire, in which case you're a bit on the screwed side, because all of these devices need power. Now, we opened up our newly converted home switch boxes, and to our great pleasure, there was neutral. So we're in a lucky situation, but we do know somebody else who's moved into an old listed property, and they're not so lucky. So the first thing to do is to open up your switch boxes with the power off and see what sort of wiring you've got. Okay, so let's assume you do have neutral wiring in your house, which you're going to need in the switch boxes. Let's look at these switches again in more detail. So I've converted these switches, by the way. So here we are. There's an example of a Sonoff switch with the front cover off. By the way, we chose this switch not just because it's technically advanced, but because it looks quite beautiful. So that's what's going to be embedded into your wall socket, and we think it's very nice to look at. And all these things are configurable, as you'll see, as we'll talk briefly in this video. Here's the top off. It just clicks on. This is going to screw into your standard UK fitting with these two screws. You take off the existing light switch, you rewire this in, and then screw it back, and then clip the top back on the front. You'll see that this actual light switch comes apart. So that's nothing amazing. So there's a relay component, and there's an electronics component. So this uses a 8266 based 8265. It's actually a special version with the larger memory. I think it could be an 8285 ESP device, and that has the electronics all on this card. There are different models for UK, Europe, and America. Obviously, America has different size faceplates, so the units are a completely different size. But I would note that for the UK, we have the best switch, I would say, because we have both wireless networking here, BGN wireless networking, and also RF frequency, so that's 433 megahertz wiring, radio. So this amazing device, which costs about £20, by the way, contains two wireless radios, one for Wi-Fi networking and one for RF 433 megahertz networking. And 433 megahertz networking, as you're probably aware, is the kind of frequency that your garage door would use, and it's used by some other smart appliance systems. But I think the way the industry is going is that because these microcontrollers incorporate Wi-Fi, I think you'll see new designs moving towards Wi-Fi and not RF-based solutions. I think that's my view. Okay, so there's the switch. We have actually changed the operating system that runs on the switch. So this switch has got its own microcontroller with its own CPU and RAM and flashable operating system, and it's that we're going to be replacing, and we're about to tell you why. So the first diagram that I prepared earlier is the kind of standard setup you'll get if you install the Sonoff switch and don't do any flashing. So you've got the switch itself, and you've got a smartphone app, and that app will have, you configure that you press some initialization buttons on the switch, and then you tell your smartphone to scan for the switch itself, and it'll identify that switch, and then you can remotely manipulate that switch. So you can be on your own Wi-Fi network at home, or you can be anywhere in the world. So imagine you've got this light switch connected to a table lamp. Then you can use the app, and the app talks to the EWE link cloud, and then back down to your light switch, and then your light switch is connected to the lamp, and via your app on your smartphone it's going to switch it on or off. Now, EWE link, which is the app that you will install, can be talked to via the Amazon cloud. So if you've got an Amazon Echo device, then the Amazon Echo device can talk up to the Amazon cloud. The Amazon cloud has a skill which knows about EWE link. So Amazon cloud then talks to EWE link, and then it talks to the switch. So without any fancy reflashing, you can use either your Amazon Echo device or a smartphone app. So we could have left it there, but we've decided not to leave it there, and what we've got is a completely different infrastructure, and that needs a different firmware. Okay, and by the way, one of the reasons why this device has become so popular is because when these guys, the Chinese guys, IT, designed it, they designed it to have a reflashable firmware. So they opened it up to people to write their own firmware, and the firmware that we're going to be using is called Tasmota. Okay, so what have we done? This is the big picture. So we have got the following. We've got a switch which is this switch here. We've changed the operating system on the switch to be something called Tasmota, and we in our house did a lot of research, and this is a couple of years ago now, and we decided to choose the Samsung Cloud and Samsung Smarthings as the center point for all our control of our devices. So our idea is to use Samsung Smarthings as the center and get everything else into Samsung Smarthings, and this is how we've done it. So Samsung Smarthings has a hub in your home, and that's what talks to the Samsung Cloud. We've got another product called Domoticz, D-O-M-O-T-I-C-Z, and the Sonoff switch can talk to Domoticz. How does it do that? Well, it uses what's called an MQTT message server. So on something as small as a Raspberry Pi, you can install the Domoticz code and the messaging product. So the Sonoff switch talks via MQ protocol to the MQTT server. That talks to Domoticz. Domoticz talks to the SmartThings hub, and the SmartThings hub talks to the cloud. So let me explain that in a bit better way. If I press, this switch is configured to a light bulb, I will press the switch. If I manually press the switch on this light bulb, okay, the light switch is on based on the switch pressing only. It's got nothing to do with any of this infrastructure. But then the information is relayed to MQTT. That enters Domoticz. Domoticz goes to the SmartThings hub. The SmartThings hub goes to the cloud. So if I look at my smartphone app for SmartThings, it'll say the light is on. And how did it know that? It's because of this chain of information flow. And similarly, if I go to my smartphone app and I want to turn the light on or off, my app talks to the smartphone's cloud. That talks down to the smartphone's hub. The smartphone hub talks to Domoticz, and Domoticz sends a message via MQ protocol to the Sonoff switch, and the Sonoff switch reacts accordingly. Alternatively, your Amazon Echo device can listen for voice commands, and your Amazon Echo device talks up to the Amazon cloud. You have an Amazon skill installed. That skill talks to the Samsung cloud, and then it's the same as before. So that's it really. The fancy software is called Tasmota. It's in a Git repository. I can't thank the creator for developing it enough. Apart from being totally incredible, some specific features of this firmware is that it actually installs a small web server onto this electronics, and therefore once you've uploaded the firmware to this chip, you actually finish the configuration by going into the web server and configuring an online panel. So it's quite user friendly. The actual difficult bit is actually flashing the firmware, and that's explained in two further videos where we actually do an existing flash of a single switch and a dual gang switch. I will just say that in terms of what you're going to need obviously the Sonoff switch itself. You're going to need a USB to serial card. It's about £10. And I used on top of that a Windows computer. So you use the Windows computer to actually interact with this card and send the firmware from the USB through the USB port to this serial connection, and that serial connection plugs into some wires. I'm trying to think which ones it is. Can I read it? Yes, I can. It's here. You can see that. So these wires are here. So you've got VCC, you've got receive, transmit, and ground. Log is not used. So these wires, which I attach with blue tack because I find that very helpful if it's just yourself, are going to plug into there, and then we're going to connect that to a PC, and that's all shown in the next two videos. And again, this is this Sonoff Tasmota firmware. Okay, I think that's all I can talk about for the overview video. Please watch the next two videos so you can see how to actually flash your switch.